S-400 has, again, because of its capabilities of the various phased A radars that it has, multiple targets that it can pick up, it has strengthened this grid of CNR. So depending upon the kind of target and the range that you want to pick up, then you can neutralize him. So that is what the S-400 does. The surgical strikers that we followed and hit them inside their own literally bedroom and drawing room. And I think Turkey came into the limelight because I think in the initial stages of the Russia-Ukraine war, they provided these to Ukraine and actually created tremendous amount of damage as far as Moscow was concerned. So now when they came in, so there was this big hype about the Bayraktars and how they are a game changer. Well, we have a very, as I say, a very, very solid control and reporting system which picked these up. And we have a great methodology by which you nominated the right one. So we were able to hit them. We are very clear, the collusivity with China, Pakistan is there. They've been screaming from the rooftops. We are, I mean, literally strategic, not only partners, but we are very sort of become sort of Siamese twins. They're linked, seem together in some kind of a bondage.
Operation Sindoor was a big success. Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Adampur airbase in Punjab. Pictures of him with S-400 defense system in the backdrop went viral in social media. These pictures hold significance because Pakistan has been claiming that it destroyed S-400 defense system. Now I'm joined by Lieutenant General Arun Sahni, General Officer Commanding in Chief of Southwestern Command. Sir, welcome to Indian Express and thank you for speaking to us. What does these pictures signify and why are they important having S-400 defense system in the backdrop when the Prime Minister visited there?
I think, Neeta, firstly, thank you very much for getting me on your show.
Yes, sir.
Delighted to be here.
Thank you, sir.
And I think the first thing that I must say that Operation Sindoor for the nation itself has been a resounding success. I think what has happened was, I think, a befitting response given by the Prime Minister in articulating this whole strategy that has happened, which has helped the country. And I think I have to always say that Prime Minister Modi surprises the world and surprises everyone with his acute statesmanship. Because there was so much noise about Adampur, which had been picked up also by the Western press,
yes,
and then got flashed all over the world, the kind of devastation supposedly which Pakistan had claimed. He very subtly did two things with literally with this particular action. He moved to Adampur, showed the complete pictures that flashed out, showed the complete runway and the facilities being in good stead. There was a talk about, as you said, the S-400 having been damaged or destroyed by them. Well, that was there in the background. Our aircrafts were there. And I think the second thing that he did, it was a fantastic morale booster for the people who have just gone through this very agonizing phase of the last 72, 96 hours. And the performance of the soldiers, I think it's a befitting feeling of, I think, euphoria when you have your leader who comes in and who actually comes and pats you and sort of stands with you. So I think that itself was tremendous significance.
Sir, also please explain to our viewers the importance or about S-400 defense system. What does it do in the layman terms, if you can explain it to us?
So let me tell you that the country's got this vast border. As we stand, we are looking at nearly about 4,000 kilometers of border along the Pakistan, which includes the AGPL, the line of control. Then you come onto the international border. Now, all along there, it is very important for us to have an early warning system which can pick up enemy air activity or aerial activity which can have an adverse effect in a situation like what it was today. It was a warlike situation, though we hadn't gone in for fighting kinetically, but we had also gone in for firing at each other. So this was the standoff weapons phase that had happened, which if I have to just take parallels to it, if you look at the Iran-Iraq war, I mean, people said it was a 100-day drawing room war. They only saw these missiles flying all over. So it was the same story here. So by the significance of this is that once you have the BrahMos, and the S-400, we have a thing called the control and reporting system along the border, where we have early warnings, where we have radars, then we have weapon systems, which is a layered system. So, and you use the appropriate weapon for the appropriate intrusion. So the S-400 has, again, because of its capabilities of the various phased A radars that it has, multiple targets that it can pick up, it has strengthened this grid of CNR. So the Akash system will have, the L-70 system will have. So everybody has his early warning elements, and then you have your control or the controlling radars which will ensure that there's automatic fire. So the coming of the S-400, has ensured that we were able to pick these up much faster, at much longer ranges. So you could designate the weapon system appropriately to engage. The second thing is, as you would agree, like we saw, Fateh 2, which came in, was destroyed by the Akash missile. When you saw some of the drones that came in, and you see these automatic fire which kept coming out on the TV, and you see these tracer bullets, those things. So every third or fifth bullet is a tracer to give them also an idea about where the direction is. So that was basically to use the L-70 or the Zu-23. So depending upon the kind of target and the range that you want to pick up, then you can neutralize him. So that is what the S-400 does. The S-400 has the capacity to take it up in the aerial stages, so what you call endothermic and exothermic kind of missiles. If we had decided to use these large hypersonic or hyperbolic missiles, then this S-400 system would have come into play.
So these strikes are also being called as Surgical Strike 2.2. India stuck in the heart of Pakistan without crossing the LOC. So BrahMos again came into, significance. The importance is being now laid out. Please explain to us again the importance of BrahMos and why it's being lauded.
Okay, so let me just put it, why is it Surgical Strike 2? I think the issue here again was that we looked at upgrading the kind of target selection that happened. If you recollect, the first time we went in along the border, we hit tactical bases from where the terrorists were being supported and thrown in. Then, as you saw, the next phase, we went in and hit a target which was the JEM training base in not POK, in Pakistan territory. This was to give a significance. Listen, I mean, if you come in from Pakistan, it's not that we will not take the place to hit you there. And this time what we did is we have hit at the nerve centers of these two terrorist groups that were there. You had the LET and the JEM, the headquarters in Muridke and Bhawalpur being hit. So that's how the Surgical 2 comes into being. As you saw, the second day, I mean, the story which came out in the papers, you had the aircraft of the civilian aircraft that was utilized. Now, that civilian aircraft created a handicap as far as India was concerned. When you picked up their enemy aircrafts or enemy systems going up in the air to be able to engage us, you could not do it because you were worried about hitting the civilian aircraft. So under the shadow of that civilian aircraft, they carried out an attack on us. And from what I can make out, maybe we did have casualties in the air. I mean, but the issue is, that's what it is. It's a war which happens. So you lose some and you'll win some. But at the end of the day, you should have given the message. So our response to all the airfields was that these are the airfields which were utilized to bring down missile attacks, bring down the aerial missiles that were fired on our aircraft or on our territories. Also from where the unarmed UAVs, the armed UAVs that were launched, whether it was the Bayraktars or whether it was the Chinese or whatever, some semi-indigenous stuff which they have created themselves, all those were fired. So this was to hit them, but to also ensure that they can't react to us. We made sure that the AWACS aircraft of the Chinese, which was the first one which actually created and gave them a little bit of an advantage, got hit at Sargodha. We hit all what you call SEAD, that is suppression of enemy air defense. And how do you suppress enemy air defense? You don't give them the eyes and ears. So to kill those eyes and ears, we hit all the radar sites from Mali right up to the top in Skadu. So you devastated his airfields, then you devastated the eyes and ears that he has. So you again give him a message that from the weapon system that you have used, we have attacked and given you this whole capability. The surgical strike is that we followed and hit them inside their own literally bedroom and drawing room.
Sir, the kind of thermal imaging we are seeing, after the strikes, tell us a, story that Indian strikes were precise to the core. So please explain to us, the images that you have seen. So what kind of, again, I'll ask you, what kind of weaponry India has used? And India has been modernizing its weapons for last couple of years, last 2 years apparently. So please explain to us now, where do we stand vis-a-vis Pakistan?
See, undoubtedly, I think it's needless to state that we have an advantage. Yes, it's a professional army. It has weapon systems which had come in from China, which has come in from Turkey, which are also state of art, similar to what we have. I think the lacing in of and absorbing them along with your legacy equipment, along with your equipment which is going obsolete, that's where I would say the acme of leadership and the acme of an army concerned. I think we spend a lot of time in the last 10 years where all the critical shortfalls that matter at a tactical operation level have been made up. Whether it was emergency paths, And I think the best thing that's happened is the Make in India. And that Make in India has given us that flexibility to be able to get the right technology the way we want it, which suits us in the manner that we do. Otherwise, you have to buy something and then decide how to utilize it. So here we design and get stuff which we require based on our operational requirement and our operational strategy. So that has helped us. And when you look at the kind of weapon systems we've got cruise missiles, you've got laser guided capability of laser guided air to air missiles, air to ground missiles. We also had the naval ships which were ready, which could have used, say, from sea to land kind of missiles. So you have this complete plethora, which thank you. I mean, I think the country really has to look at the fact that we also have a NAVIC own GPS kind of a system that is there, which was also laced in appropriately with some of our systems, so that you couldn't be sort of jammed out as what happened to Ukraine. See, when Russia did that.
Yes.
So even if somebody wanted to block it out, well, the frequency bands and the methodology that we function, it can be done, but well, it's more difficult, I would say.
So what about Turkey drones, which were, launched at India? As many as 400 to 500 Turkey drones were launched on India, kamikaze, style. So explain, what does it mean, and what kind of drones are equipped with? What kind of weaponry are they equipped with?
So kamikaze is a term which came up in Second World War, and if all of you have seen this movie called Pearl Harbor, what was it? The Japanese, to attack the fleet of the superior fleet of the Allies, had these pilots who actually became live bombs. It was like a suicide mission. They came and sort of crashed into the battleship to break it open. So that word kamikaze came from there. So today what we have done is the unarmed aerial vehicles that have come up today have been given this capacity of certain amount of explosive content which they carry. So they can have a explosive which sort of affects the people in the people. That is, otherwise you could have those which have an HEAT content, which means it can penetrate armor and vehicles which have certain amount of protection based on what you want to hit. So these drones are being called now the kamikaze drones. And I think Turkey came into the limelight because I think in the initial stages of the Russia-Ukraine war, they provided these to Ukraine and actually created tremendous amount of damage as far as Moscow was concerned. If you recollect, the bridge going into Crimea got attacked. Their Moskva ship which sank was actually this was one of the elements that was used along with it to hit it down. So now when they came in, so there was this big hype about the Bayraktars and how they are a game changer. Well, we have a very, as I say, a very, very solid control and reporting system which picked these up, and we have a great methodology by which you nominated the right ones. So we were able to hit them, to put at bay. So as you see, the surprise element which they got in Ukraine was nullified subsequently by the Russians, and the operations continued flawlessly in the manner. I mean, the attrition war is a different story, but the technology upgradation which changed the battle contours were no longer applicable. And the same has happened here. We've been able to nullify them and hit most of them. Some of them have dropped in our area, I'm sure. But fortunately, no major casualties. You saw these civilian areas which got hit. Some were from artillery shells, but a lot of them in Jammu area were all these drones, kamikaze drones. And that's how we ended up with having about 26 odd civilian casualties. Absolutely. So Pakistan is guilty of the fact of hitting civilian places.
So what about the evidences? These strikes which are being done from the Pakistani side, and the missiles, or even these drones. What kind of evidence has or India might have collected, which they would be presenting towards the international community? What kind of evidences we would have?
So if you see, one of the biggest lacunas that happened was in the battle when we did the Balakot strikes. The Pakis took all these foreign diplomats and showed them कि यहाँ पे कुछ नहीं हुआ. They were able to repair, and whatever little devastation. Actually, did they take them to the site also is debatable. But they took them to a site and said यहाँ पर लगा था and कुछ नहीं हुआ. So this time, I think, as you saw in both the briefings of the DGMOs, the aircraft from our own side, today we have the capacity, both satellite and from aircraft flying on our own side, to pick up images of which is called PSDA, the post-strike damage assessment. And for that, you have to have pictures. So aircrafts who go in and fire, even from a distance of a standoff, can pick up these pictures. And if you saw, these pictures speak louder than words. Yeah. So I think this is available to the world. The world wants to close its eyes like an ostrich and only believe what Pakistan ISPR says. Well, you and I can't do much. So that's where the challenge remains for India, to fight this narrative war. And unfortunately, the developed world uh, can't just see another, as they say, a brown nation suddenly become so self-dependent. So there's a I would say a racist tinge to the way they look at things. They're happy to see India being the bad guy, India being the one who's been bashed up.
Talking about racism also and talking about the Western world, Mr. Trump, the US president, has been again and again saying, again he has reiterated that America brokered peace as far as India and Pakistan were concerned.
I mean, we've all heard. So, I mean, Trump's statements cannot be taken at face value. I mean, he wants Greenland. He's told Canada to become the 51st state. He says the Gulf of Mexico is the Gulf of America. So, I'm sorry. I think he likes to take credit. And somehow he's a very transactional man. Being himself a businessman, everything is related to trade. If it's a money transaction, great. He understands it. So, look at it, even geopolitical conflicts. He's taken it into a monetary stage of trade, and I think India is correctly refuted. We haven't had that. And the second part is India has been insisting time and again that this is a bilateral matter which has to be resolved between two. We don't want mediators. And the third issue is when you listen to Trump's statement, the complete complexion. He's talking about it's a war of decades, it's a war of centuries. He has no clue where India and Pakistan. I mean, he knows Modi Saab and he knows Howdy Modi, but I'm sorry, as far as the geopolitics and geostrategics are concerned, I don't think he's too affected. His rest of the country looks after that.
Sir, there was also this talk that India lost its plot as far as, telling the world about what all was happening on the ground. In fact, Ministry of Defense and some briefed some envoys also, foreign country envoys also. Do you think this is again a part of diplomacy which India needs to play out, telling the world that how India was being threatened by Pakistan in the name of a nuclear this thing?
I think the Prime Minister's statement yesterday itself carried that significance. That we will not be sort of nuclear blackmailed, and that nuclear blackmail to do terrorist acts within our country. So I think he's been very clear about it. I think the answer is yes, we can improve always what we were doing, but we also have to be aware of the fact that the world does not need to know everything, because when operations are ongoing, see, Operation Sindoor hasn't ended. Maybe 5 years from now or a year down the line, when Operation Sindoor is called,
even the Prime Minister said that the military action has been suspended.
Yeah, it's suspended. If tomorrow he responds, we still have the right to respond. We haven't said it's over. I mean, like it's happening in the artillery duels that are happening on the borders. I mean, along the LC, he's firing, we fire back. So if he does the same action what he's done earlier, we will respond. So I think we shouldn't get too overtly worried. Yes, we should improve what we are doing. Our narrative building, our signaling, our posturing, the way we engage with the rest of the world has to happen. But when an operation is ongoing, which I thought that the DG Air Ops was very beautifully articulated. He says कि लड़ाई हो रही है तो कुछ ना कुछ तो होगा नुकसान, but हमारे सारे बंदे safe हैं, which indicates so naturally if there are two warring nations, they're bound to be casualties.
So larger part of the ceasefire, see, such skirmishes might go on between India and Pakistan. They have been going on, but do you think larger part of the ceasefire will hold?
I think so. We still have, as I say, the biggest stick which is actually going to start making an effect is the Indus Water Treaty. I mean, tomorrow, when this whole hinterland of Punjab starts suffering, and that fancy irrigation network which they have, a canal network, doesn't have water, people are going to start screaming. Yeah. So I think overall, it's going to make an impact. The military technological advancement which Pakistan kept boasting and beating its chest, कि हिंदुस्तान और हम तो कर सकते हैं, मतलब जो वो कर सकते हैं, we can do the same amount. I'm sorry, we put it to rest. Yes, there is an asymmetry that exists. It's not that it's totally out of proportion, but there's an asymmetry. India is technologically no longer there where it was, say, 15 years back. And in the last decade, we have really covered a lot of mileage, and that has surprised the world. So if I have to just give an example, our landing on the moon itself shocked the world.
Yes.
So we can do things. Yeah. So the brain power of the world today, you see any of the tech companies who is an Indian origin guy at the head. So I think we can do it, and we're doing it, and we're getting our act together. It's a democracy. It's a large country. 1.4 billion is. If I put Europe 600 and 300 of America, they're less than us. Yeah. So I mean, so there is a challenge of sorts in India.
Absolutely. Today we also saw pictures of the Chief of Defence Staff accompanied by the various chiefs. He was there with the President. Apparently, he was briefing her about Operation Sindoor. So tell us the dynamics as to why it is important and what kind of information would they be parting with?
See, I think we have to understand it. In our democracy, the supreme commander of the armed forces is the president of India. So I think it is incumbent, the executive head, which is, of course, the prime minister with whom you look at daily chores. I think at some stage we needed to give him. So this pause that has happened now in the military conflict, all four have gone there, and I'm sure they would brief her on what were the fundamental issues that came up, which he would have been briefed by the politician. We give them the military perspective. We decide why we did what we did, and she should also know if there have been certain amount of shortcomings and casualties. We'll share with her which are the challenges that have emerged, because every time you do, you need to improve on your shortcomings. So I presume it's going to be a free and frank engagement with her to keep her abreast, as she still happens to be the supreme commander of the armed forces.
So last question about the politics. Largely political parties have supported India, the government, and even the security forces, although the demand for a special session has been raised by the opposition parties. Do you think that the opposition parties should be briefed about such a big operation?
No, I think so. So I think the country did that earlier. I think the
there was an all-party meeting. Yeah,
they had an all-party meeting in it. But I think they're being a little premature. The operations are still ongoing, and I think we've already seen what happened in Op Vijay. I mean, with due respects to Barkha and her reporting from Kargil actually created casualties for us. The reporting of the operations in Bombay when the Taj incident happened, that Kasab issue. They started streaming those boys coming down and rappelling into that particular building, which led to them being knocked out. So I think it is too premature. The Op Sindoor is ongoing till the borders become silent, and as they say, the powder runs dry on both sides. That is the time when they have the right to do it. Till then, I don't think the government needs to share and make it a political issue, which will be battled. I mean, it was extremely heartening to see the unison of voices which talked about national security and the need to deal with the terrorism. But I think now it's not the right time to do it. Politics should have its play this time once the operations are over.
So what kind of days ahead? Tough days ahead, because India is still Pakistan. You cannot change your neighbors. So what kind of days do we predict ahead?
See, I have to always give you this thing. Ziaul Haq started what he called the Islamization of the armed forces. And today there are 2 or 3 statements which, if you look at it, is of concern, and that is what the armed forces, I'm sure, are looking at it very seriously. The first issue is that Munir himself, everybody's calling him Mullah Munir, has studied in a madrasa, he's done in the seminaries. So I think he's Islamist to the core. In that period from Ziaul Haq to now, where people have reached the top, there seems to be a large amount of people who got Islamized. I mean, who are more fundamentalist in their approach to their how they deal on government-to-government relations or military-to-military relations. You see, there were uniformed people at the cremations, and you hear the ISPR jab saying, "Ki hum to jihadi army hai." I mean, hello, you're an professional armed forces. So the minute these terms come out, I think it raises the hackles for all of us who are former soldiers and those who are there. That means you cannot take anything lying down. Please don't go by the apparent peace, as they say, the lull before the storm. So we'll have to have our eyes and ears, a system of being aware 24/7, ensuring that our lines of intelligence and lies remain there, and we are ready to take a responsive action, as the Prime Minister has enunciated in the change policy.
So last question, what about China? China also plays a very crucial role as far as the equation between India and Pakistan is concerned. So what do you have to say on that?
I think we are very clear. The collusivity with China, Pakistan is there. They've been screaming from the rooftops. We are, literally strategic, not only partners, but we are very become Siamese twins. They're linked, seen together in some kind of a bondage. And I think for China, it suits them. They've got North Korea and they've got Pakistan. North Korea was a great instrument as a proxy state to see how great powers react, see how US reacts, to learn from itself and learn and improve upon it. And as far as Pakistan is concerned, the only challenge that it faces in this part of the world is India. And it feels India can be used as a pivot because of our liberal democracy kind of a relationship with the Western world, could actually be used to try and stymie its aspirations of being a superpower and its own vision of 2050, 2049. So I think India remains a threat, and Pakistan becomes the best way to use it. I mean, it's like what's happened in Russia, Ukraine, I feel, to an extent. I mean, on the blood of Ukraine and the complete devastation of Ukraine, I mean, it's become a testing ground, or the ideological war which the rest of the West is fighting on their blood. Is that right? I don't think so. And I think the same story here. So we'll have to be conscious that China may not come out overtly, but covertly support it. The overt thing we've seen the P-15E, we've seen the AWACS, we've seen the weapon system they've been given. And as you see, within the last 5 to 7 years, 81% today of weaponry of Pakistan comes from China, which is a phenomenal amount, because the rest of the world stopped it. You've seen the JF-10s, the JF-17s, you're seeing their camaraderie in joining up, and a lot of the missile technologies, thank you, it started off many years back from the North Korean M7, M9, which came in to make the Hataf series. But today again, new technology, this linking of AI with technologies and legacy equipment is all going to come. So we should be conscious, yes. If we have the Five Eyes to help us with the eyes and ears till we develop our own, well, he's got the satellite communications and the satellite constellations of China for his ISR, for his reconnaissance, for his surveillance. So I think we'll have to be extremely cautious. We'll have to be very vigilant. And I think our strategies will evolve. I'm sure the people today in chair have done a very befitting response, and I'm sure they'll meet up to the new challenges. That's the strength of our army, I think.
Absolutely.
Or when I say army, it's the armed forces.
So one more thing, when you talk about weapons, even, Jammu Kashmir police keeps harping on the kind of weaponry which has been recovered from terrorists who are being killed there. They have very sophisticated weapons. Some even have the markings of Afghanistan and some of US also. True. NATO weapons, basically. So again, what is the route which the weapons are reaching them, these terrorists, as far who are operating in J&K is concerned?
See, today I think what you saw, which the drug wars which are happening, they've been using these small drones to drop it at various places. And there are what we call the OGWs, or the overground workers, or the underground workers, the sleeper cells. They know where it is coming in, and they have their own way of signaling. Today there's so much on social media methodologies to communicate. You just don't have to pick up a phone and speak. There are methodologies by which it's happening. So they are doing that. Then they do keep sending in also with man-packed couriers that come in. Some get shot, but for every 3 or 4 that you shoot or sort of catch them at the borders, you'll always find 1 or 2 will slip through. Because whatever you say, it's a harsh terrain between India and Pakistan. And today they were using routes like coming in, and China today is providing them. And if now the worry for us is Bangladesh. I mean, if Bangladesh is going to become another conduit for Pakistan to create hassles out here, which they seem to be getting closer in bed together now, is a challenge. So there are routes that can come in. So I would say, let's just put it like this, weapons will keep coming in. We need to be a little more abreast of it. And I think it's very important that the proliferation of weapons that happened after the American withdrawal from Afghanistan is we're going to see the impact of it for another maybe half a decade till they're there. I mean, the last 10 years, because all that from Afghanistan came into Pakistan or came through the terrorist routes. And that must have really created confusion. And that we will see that this thing, but I think our forces have now worked out well. You shouldn't worry too much.
So Operation Sindoor has clearly, changed the dynamics as far as these two nuclear neighbors are concerned, Pakistan and India. But India needs to remain cautious. Thank you, sir, for speaking to us.
Oh, Neeta, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to be with both of you. Thank you. And Jai Hind to all the viewers.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Of course.